There was a time when, if you didn't have a BlackBerry, you weren't taken seriously in business. Presidents used it, CEOs depended on it, entire companies ran on it, and then, almost overnight, it disappeared. So what happened? Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. This is Reluctant Lessons, where businesses go wrong. A series where we take a hard look at companies that didn't just struggle, they made critical decisions that changed their trajectory forever. In this episode, we're talking about BlackBerry, a company that didn't just lead the market, it defined it. BlackBerry, originally known as Research in Motion, was founded in 1984. But it wasn't until the late 1990s and early 2000s that they found their breakthrough. Email. Not just email, mobile email. That sounds basic today, but at the time, it was revolutionary. BlackBerry didn't just give you access to email, it gave you instant, secure, push email. Your inbox came to you in real time. No dialing in, no refreshing, no waiting. For businesses, this was a game changer. Executives could respond immediately. Sales teams could stay connected. Decisions moved faster. And then there was the keyboard. That physical keyboard became iconic, fast, tactile, reliable. For many users, it was far superior to anything they've seen on the market. By the mid-2000s, BlackBerry owned the enterprise market, and the financials reflected that dominance. BlackBerry's annual revenue peaked around 2011 at approximately $20 billion. That was the high watermark. The company was profitable, growing, and deeply embedded in corporate infrastructure, and the stock reflected that confidence. At its peak, shares traded near $147. The market believed BlackBerry wasn't just a leader, but the future. Then, in 2007, the Apple iPhone was introduced, and this is where the story starts to change. At first, BlackBerry didn't take it seriously. From their perspective, the iPhone had major flaws. No physical keyboard. That alone was a deal breaker in their minds. Typing on glass seemed inefficient and impractical. The device was also seen as more consumer-focused than business-focused. Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, who also had a horse in the mobile phone race, summed it up in this interview.
Steve Jobs goes to Macworld and he pulls out this iPhone. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine.
Like Microsoft, BlackBerry believed their core market, enterprise users, would never abandon the keyboard for a touchscreen, and in fairness, early on, they weren't entirely wrong, but they were missing something critical. The iPhone wasn't just a better phone, it was a new platform. Touchscreens enabled flexibility, software became the interface, and most importantly, the app ecosystem began to emerge.
What we call the App Store. This is an application we've written to deliver apps to the iPhone, and we're going to put it on every single iPhone with the next release of the software. And so our developers are going to be able to reach every iPhone user through the App Store. This is the way we're going to distribute apps to the iPhone.
This wasn't just about email anymore. It was about everything. BlackBerry responded, but not effectively.
Whoa. It has no keyboard. And then, did it just click? You've never clicked a screen before. Is that supposed to happen? And is it supposed to feel so right? It feels like a keyboard, just no keys. What kind of mad genius is behind this? Oh, right.
America's largest 3G network introduces the world's first touchscreen BlackBerry, only from Verizon Wireless.
They introduced the BlackBerry Storm, their attempt at a touchscreen device. That didn't go well. It was widely criticized. The interface was clunky, the experience lagged behind competitors, and it really felt like a desperate compromise more than an innovation. At the same time, BlackBerry tried to maintain its identity. They held onto the keyboard, they focused on enterprise, they continued to prioritize email and security, But the market was shifting. Consumers were driving adoption. Employees were bringing their own devices into the workplace. This became known as BYOD, bring your own device. And suddenly, IT departments were no longer dictating what devices employees used. Employees were choosing iPhones and later Android devices. BlackBerry also failed to build a competitive app ecosystem. Developers were where the users were, and the users were leaving. Without apps, the platform became less relevant. Without relevance, adoption declined. And once that cycle begins, it's very difficult to reverse. And the numbers began to reflect that shift. From its peak, $20 billion in annual revenue in 2011, BlackBerry's revenue fell sharply over the next several years. By 2016, just 5 years later, revenue had dropped to under $3 billion from $20 billion, a $17 billion drop, or about 85% decline in just 5 years. Think about that. Not slow erosion, a collapse, and the stock followed the same trajectory. From a peak of nearly $147, shares fell into the single digits. In recent years, the stock has hovered in the low single-digit range. That's not a temporary setback. That's a fundamental reset in how the market values the company. By the early 2010s, the decline was clear. Market share dropped rapidly. Revenue followed. Investor confidence just disappeared. BlackBerry attempted to reinvent itself multiple times. New operating systems, new devices, and even a shift towards software and security services. But the momentum was gone. The company that once defined mobile productivity was now trying to catch up. And in technology, catching up is one of the hardest things to do. Today, BlackBerry still exists, but not as a phone company. It has pivoted into cybersecurity and software, a very different business than the one that made it famous. So what can we learn from BlackBerry? First, success can blind you. BlackBerry wasn't failing when the iPhone was introduced. They were thriving. But peak revenue can be dangerous because it creates the illusion that what got you here will keep you here. Second, don't overprotect your core advantage. The keyboard was BlackBerry's strength, but it also became its constraint. They optimized for what made them successful instead of what the market was becoming. And third, understand where your customers are going, not where they've been. BlackBerry focused on enterprise, but the market shifted to consumers driving adoption. They didn't move fast enough to follow that shift. And remember, in business, shift happens. And finally, numbers don't lie. When revenue drops 85% and the stock collapses alongside it, that's not noise. That's the market telling you something fundamental has changed. BlackBerry didn't fail because they didn't innovate. They failed because they didn't adapt to the right innovation at the right time. And that's the real lesson. In business, it's not enough to be right about what works today. You have to be right about what's coming next. If you enjoyed this episode of Reluctant Lessons, where businesses go wrong, there's more coming because the pattern is always the same. Success leaves clues, but so does failure. As I mentioned, we have more Reluctant Lessons coming your way. Radio Shack, WeWork, Toys R Us, Pan Am, and so many more. There's really no shortage. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And finally, remember this. Success leaves clues, but failure leaves lessons if you're willing to see them. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. I'll see you again next time.